welcome to the channel and to this deployment zone video. This is the show where I take a look at a model that I've painted recently that will be hitting my deployment zone in the near future. So today we're looking at Belisarius Cawl, and we'll be going through some of his stats, some of the ways you can deploy him, and then at the end of the video he'll be going up against the Crash Test Marines just to see how good he is and what he can do. Now, I'm sure that most of you are aware that Cawl is found in this book here, The Gathering Storm, Fall of Cadia. He's 200 points, he's a HQ for the Colt Mech, and he is an absolute tank. What do I mean by tank? Well, let's talk about his resilience. This guy has got 5 wounds, 2 up save, 5 up invulnerable, and a 5 up feel no pain, and if he is your warlord, he can reroll that feel no pain. So to small arms fire, to everything that has an AP value of 3 or higher, he's taking his 2 up and then a 5 up rerollable. And then to everything that is negating his 2 up save, he's taking a 5 up invuln, 5 up feel no pain, and 5 up feel no pain. 5 up, 5 up, 5 up on 5 wounds at toughness 6, and he recovers D3 wounds at the start of every turn. So even if he's down to a 1 wound, in 1 turn, you will recover D3 wounds, and if he doesn't take any more wounds, then he will recover D3 more wounds. There's every potential that at the end of the combat, at the end of the game, this guy is still rocking on the full wounds. He's not an Eternal Warrior at toughness 6, so he can't be doubled out by strength 10 weaponry at toughness 6, but because he's not an Eternal Warrior, he will be susceptible to weapons with the instant death rule, in particular force weapons. A Grey Knight guy with force on, or any psyker with a force on in close combat could kill him, because remember as well, instant death weapons you don't get your feel no pain against. So D's will hurt him, but D's hurt everyone, and instant death is his bane. So minus those bits aside, if you're using him, you don't want to throw him in a close combat against guys with force weapons. And he should pretty much be impervious to most damage and be able to go through most of the game. He is a tank. At toughness 6 with 5 wounds and the ability to heal, his resilience is such that you can almost leave this guy on his own, but he's also an independent character, so you can drop him in a unit of dudes, which means that his resilience goes up by a factor of the number of bodies that he has around him. Then as for offensive capability, he has 1 gun here. It's only a 12-inch range, so beyond 12-inch range this guy isn't reaching out and touching anyone, but within 12-inch range you don't get stats better than strength 10 AP1. It's a D3 shot weapon, so he's getting between 1 and 3 shots a turn, and at ballistic skill 5 he's sitting on 2s. It's mastercrafted, so he's re-rolling one of those hits, and it's also got the melter special rule. So it's not a horde killer. If he's going up against a swarm of bugs chasing down towards him, or some orcs, he's only killing a couple of them. But against terminators, against monstrous creatures, and particularly against vehicles, he's certainly doing damage. Strength 10 AP1 as well poses a threat to even super heavies. So it's nothing to be sniffed at, but it is in close combat where his offensive capability really kicks in. So initiative step 10, he has use of his Macandrite harness, which does between 3 and 13 attacks at initiative strength 10. You get 2d6 attacks at strength 4 AP dash, and you get 1 strength user attack, so it's strength 5 attack at initiative strength 10 with the Haywire special rule. Now that sounds very, very good. It will be good against those little Gribblies that we talked about, against a horde of orcs, against a unit of Tyranids, but against Space Marines, such as the Crash Test Marines, for example, these are attacks. So let's say he gets his 2d6, of his 2d6 attacks, he gets the maximum, which is 12 attacks. He's got to roll a hit. He'll be hitting on 3s because he's weapon skill 5, so he's getting between 8 and 9 hits, and then it's strength 4, so he's wounded on 4s, so he's getting between 4 and 5 hits versus a Space Marine. That's if he gets the maximum 12, and so he's potentially killing 2 Space Marines at initiative step 10. That's nothing to be sniffed at because those are free attacks, those are free hits. And not forget the sting in the tail as well, that 1 extra strength 5 Haywire hit, also AP dash. And that's before he hits himself. versus Space Marines, he'll be going second though, because he's initiative step 3. He's got base attacks 3, but he has 2 close combat weapons, neither of which are specialist weapons, so he's got 4 attacks base. Both are +1 strength, so in close combat he attacks at strength 6, initiative 3, with 4 attacks. These 4 attacks at strength 6, he can either choose to use his Arc Scourge, which is AP4 Haywire, mastercrafted, or he can use his, and the Arc Scourge is around here, so that's strength 6 AP4, mastercrafted Haywire, very nice. He'll wreck vehicles in close combat with the Kendrite Hive hit at initiative 10, and then this thing, if he's going up against a vehicle, it is dead. Or if you don't want to use that AP4 attack because you're going up against Terminators or something a bit tougher, then he can use his mastercrafted Power Axe. Because it's a Power Axe, it's unwieldy, he'll be hitting at initiative 1, but because it's a Power Axe, it'll be AP2, again, burning through armor. And this guy locked up in combat with anything without a power weapon should slowly mulch his way through them. For those of you that watched the Warhammer Live show, knew that he was going up against a Lord of Change with a 3-up Invulnerable Saber demon, and normally demons in close combat just chew through anything in the Cult Mech book, and he stood his ground for turn after turn after turn, dealing out wound and slowly chipping away at him and slowly chipping away at him. And if my opponent hadn't conceded, despite the fact that his opponent, the guy Call, was going up against at a 3-up Invulnerable Save, he would have eventually broke his way out of close combat. This guy is 10,000 years old. He's been around since the time of the Horus Heresy. He knows how to stay alive. So yeah, his stats are pretty damn good. Not a horde killer at range, but a horde killer in close combat. He'll be most effective versus vehicles, versus dreadnoughts, versus anything that hasn't got a D weapon in close combat or a force weapon, and he should be able to murder his way through most things, healing himself as he goes. So compared to a Tech Priest Dominus, the only other HQ choice at the moment in the Tech Priest list, this guy is twice as expensive but 3 times as resilient and 3 times as killy. He's an absolute steal for the points. He reminds me very much of a monstrous creature, and on paper he looks like a monstrous creature, but he's not a monstrous creature. He's still slow, he's very bulky, he's going to be moving around 6 and not going very quickly anywhere you want him to. Again, very tank-like in his stacks. You can use Belisarius Call to replace any Tech Priest Dominus in any Cult Mechanicus formation, or you can take him as a HQ. But that particular little rule that they chucked in there to replace. So whenever there is a formation, such as the Holy Requisitioner, you can drop this guy in instead. That makes it very interesting because they specifically state the Holy Requisitioner. The Holy Requisitioner formation is the one where you have a Tech Priest Dominus with a bunch of breachers, and it allows the unit to deep strike in. So this guy who's slow, who only moves 6 inches a turn, potentially you could deep strike him in turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. If you deep strike a Holy Requisitioner within 6 inches of an objective, he doesn't scatter. And then the breachers that land within 6 inches of him will not scatter. So you drop him in 6 inches from an objective, you drop your breachers in, and you make sure after you drop your breachers in, they're within 2 inches of him. At the end of the movement phase, he'll be attached to them. And suddenly you've got Call 12 inches, 24 inches, 36 inches away from your deployment zone, deeper and deeper into the opponent's lines, which means that this guy is running amok amongst the enemy artillery or enemy units in the back line, absolutely blitzing through them. And considering his resilience, normally it would be a bit suicidal to drop your HQ down in amongst the back lines. You particularly wouldn't want to do that. Or you bring a Holy Requisitioner when you don't really care about losing your Warlord. In this case, because you've got Call, it's unlikely he's going to die unless he's going up against those specialist weapons I mentioned earlier. So that's where he fits in. He opens up lots of different options, or rather there's more than one option that you can fit him into your Cult Mech list. You can also bring along in the Conclave Acquisitorius, which is the new formation in the Fall of Cadia book. But there's more. Oh yes, there's more. He can also be taken as a HQ for any armies of the Imperium. So if you are an Imperial tank commander and you're fed up of having a squishy HQ command squad, bring along Khorne. If you're running a Renegade Space Marine chapter and you want to change it up for a change, drop this guy in a bunch of 10 Hammer Terminators, you can. You can bring this guy as your HQ choice. That could be your compulsory choice in a combined slot, or he just is a HQ for armies of the Imperium. Very, very interesting choice there. The other two characters in the Fall of Kedir book have that option as well, but just sticking with Khorne specifically for now, if you run an army of the Imperium, this is a new HQ slot you can bring. That's very interesting. And it opens up, again, lots of different options, lots of different ways you could potentially play him, and to list all the different combinations that you could do in this video would be crazy. And in fact, if you guys have got so many good ideas about different ways you could run him and different armies you could drop him in and different combinations you could make, I'd love to hear it in the comment section. It'd be interesting to see what your fevered brains come up with. Right, let's talk about Canticles of the Omnissiah and Canticles of the Archmagos, because Khorne has these rules too. So what are these rules for the uninitiated? Canticles of the Omnissiah is available in the Cult Mechanicus book, and all the units in there have the Canticles of the Omnissiah rule. What does this mean? Canticles of the Omnissiah there's 6 of them. So once per turn you select one of the Canticles of the Omnissiah, and every unit in your army that has the Canticles of the Omnissiah special rule benefits from that rule. 3 of them are close combat orientated, which allow you to either reroll attacks or increase strength or do electrocution strength. 4 hits at initiative 10. 3 of them are close combat orientated. 1 of them gives you increased resilience, gives you cover with stealth or shrouded or both. 1 of them is rerolls or fearless. 1 of them is a morale booster, and 1 of them allows you to shoot better, either rerolling 1s or 2s or twin linking all your guns. So yeah, you pick 1 a turn and you apply that to all the units in your army that has Canticles of the Omnissiah. If you run the Divine Chorus, which is the standard Cult Mechanical Battle Congregation, you get the Divine Chorus rule, which allows you to re-choose one of these abilities, and the one that the internet considers to be the strongest is Shroud's Arm, which you can potentially get stealth and shrouded to all your units. So if your units with Canticles of the Omnissiah are in cover, you're looking at a 2-up save, and you could pop this off twice if you're running an Occult Mech Battle Congregation, because with Divine Chorus you can do one of the abilities twice, and if you're in the open you've got a 4-up cover save. The way Canticles work is if you've got 1 to 3 units in your army with this rule, then it'll affect the lowest ability. So for example, the shooting one is reroll to hit rolls of 1. If you've got 4 to 7 units in your army with the Canticles of the Omnissiah rule, then you'll reroll 1s and 2s to shoot. And if you've got 8+ units with this rule, then you'll re-roll all your shooting attacks. So the way it works is the more units, the more potent the Canticle. At the beginning of the game, if you're running purely Cult Mech, you're most likely benefiting from the full effect of the rules. And then towards the later stages of the game, as units are dying out, the rules are probably less beneficial to you, less powerful, less potent. That's how Canticles of the Omnissiah work. Khorne himself has the benefits of Canticles of the Archmagos, which the rules state work exactly the same way as Canticles of the Omnissiah. And in here you've got 1 that grants it will not die, 1 that grants increased ballistic skill, and 1 that grants increased invulnerable saves. Now this is very interesting because he has Canticles of the Archmagos and he has Canticles of the Omnissiah. It says they work the same, so rules as written, you could pop off both Canticles in 1 turn. It doesn't say you can do one or the other. Essentially he's got 2 special rules, one being Canticles of the Omnissiah, and another one being Canticles of the Archmagos. So for example, you could increase your invulnerable save on your units with Canticles of the Archmagos, and then go flying into close combat and give everyone increased strength. I see no real reason why you can't use both Canticles. The fluff wise behind the Canticles are, this guy is sending orders, sending instructions down the noosphere, binaric chants, which change the way units fight and react and respond in battle. He's programming and reprogramming servitors and automators, telling them what to do and when to do it in the middle of battle. And just like sending a computer program down the wire, these Cataphron breachers or your Castellan robots could be running two programs at the same time. Well, obviously we're going to need a FAQ on this, and some people are going to say that you can only use the Omnissiah rules or the Archmagos rules, one of them a turn, not both of them in the same turn. But rules as written, to my mind, there's nothing stating that you can't chuck both of them in one turn. Which also leaves another interesting rules question, because you have the Divine Chorus when you bring the Cult Mechanicus Battle Congregation, which allows you to reuse one of the Canticles of the Omnissiah. As the Canticles of the Archmagos function in exactly the same way as the Canticles of the Omnissiah, would that allow you to reuse the Canticles of the Archmagos? I would say no, because the Divine Chorus rule states that you can reuse a Canticle of the Omnissiah, and only a Canticle of the Omnissiah. So yeah, there's some rules around the Canticles that the Games Workshop could tidy up for us. Maybe we'll get a FAQ at some point, or an ITC ruling or something, or the internet start leaning in a certain direction, and once the majority of the internet start leaning in a certain direction, then pretty much everyone takes that as canon. But for now, from what I can see, you can use both of the Canticles in the same turn, reusing Canticles of the Omnissiah if you've got a battle congregation. So what this chap does then essentially is, as well as his very resilient stats, as well as his ability to shoot at a strength 10 AP1 melt around, as well as all his close combat attacks, as well as his just straight up abilities that he is also extremely good at buffing units around him. Canticles of the Omnissiah goes upwards, gets more powerful for more units that you have with Canticles of the Omnissiah, so he's supposed to he'll be most effective when he's used in cult mech units. But with the War Convocation formation and with the Conclave Acquisitorius, which is in this book here, which is here, all units in here gain Canticles of the Omnissiah. All units in the War Convocation formation gain Canticles of the Omnissiah. So this is a way of bringing Call along, because Call is part of this formation. And in the War Convocation, you can swap out your Tech Priest Dominus for Call. This is a way of giving units that are not Cult Mechanicus Canticles of the Omnissiah as well, because this Conclave Acquisitorius is essentially mainly Skitarii and an Imperial Knight. And as you know, most of you know that from the War Convocation, it's mainly Skitarii and an Imperial Knight as well. Very similar build. This one is like a Diet Coke version of the War Convocation. So what I'm saying is, as well as being considerable in his own right, he has the ability to affect armies around him as well, mainly Cult Mechanicus, but in some formations, some Skitarii as well. And the Canticles of the Archmagos also affect all friendly vehicles from armies of the Imperium within 12 inches of him. So let's say this is at its maximum effect, 8+ units with Canticles of the Omnissiah, Canticles of the Archmagos, and he's in the back lines surrounded by Layman Russes and your Titan and your Imperial Knight, and suddenly he can give all the friendly vehicles within 12 inches of him It Will Not Die, and at the full effect you can roll It Will Not Die 3 times. Imagine rolling It Will Not Die 3 times on your Imperial Knight, or on your Reaver Titan, or on your Layman Russ tank squadron. He can affect all friendly units vehicle units within 12 inches as well. Not too shabby. If you bring him on along as just a HQ choice, for example, in an Imperial Guard list, he will be the only chap in the army with the Canticles rule, special rule. So you'll only ever benefit from the lowest buff from the Canticles rule. So for example, increased ballistic skill of 1, 2 or 3. If he's the only one with the Canticles rule, then you'll only get an increased ballistic skill of 1. But increasing a ballistic skill of 1 to a bunch of Leman Russes is very potent. Given it will not die to a bunch of vehicles, even if you're getting 1 roll on each vehicle, is quite potent. So yeah, his buffing abilities work best with certain Cult Mech and Skitarii lists. He can buff vehicle units around him to a minimal effect if you just bring this chap along. But if you want to get full use of him, basically you need to get Adeptus Mechanicus. So we're looking at a tank with considerable shooting abilities, close combat abilities, and abilities to affect the army-wide rules. He's a steal for 200 points. What's the best way to use him in your army? So let's say we're running an Adeptus Mechanicus army. What's the best way to use him? Well, undoubtedly, the War Convocation is probably the best formation, and sticking him in instead of a Tech Priest Dominus is probably the best way to run Call. If you don't want to bring a War Convocation and you're sticking strictly to the Cult Mechanicus Codex, then I would probably stick him in with a Holy Requisitioner formation, and then use the Cult Mechanicus Battle Congregation, a normal detachment from the book, and a Holy Requisitioner. That way I can deep strike him in with the breaches up in my opponent's grill to start causing damage, while the servitors and the Cataphron robots, Castellan robots, start moving up the field and laying down a lot of firepower. That's probably the best way to use him in a list strictly for that. If you want to use him in an Armies of the Imperium list, I keep referring to it, but I'll refer to it again. I think he'll work well in a Guard list. And I can see some utilities, because his stats are so good, but I can see some utilities in Inquisition lists and even Space Marine lists as well. He's not to be sniffed at because he's a beast on his own. You can't simply add him to a bunch of Skitarii. You can't bring a Skitarii Maniple and put him in it, because there's no HQ slot in a Skitarii Maniple, which he sits in. To add him with some Skitarii, it's going to have to be either Unbound or a Conclave Acquisitorius or a War Convocation, or some kind of mixed list where you've got Cult Mech and some Skitarii in. But if you're bringing Skitarii with Call, you might as well bring one of those formations where they can benefit from Canticles as well. How to actually use him on the tabletop? Well, I mentioned dropping him in with the Holy Requisitioner, but apart from that, I would seriously consider sticking him with a unit of dudes, any dudes, and just pushing him up the table. Let him be the bullet magnet that he is. Let him take it. Short of going up against an army with a lot of force weapons or a lot of D, such as Eldar D-size or something, just shove him up the table and be as aggressive as you can. Try and soak up as much firepower with him as you can, which will let the remainder of your army punch face. Honestly, I typically don't like the kind of units you just trudge forward and shoot and attack and trudge forward and shoot and attack. I try to get a bit more tactical with that, but this guy, he's not subtle. You are throwing a slow moving brick forward at your opponent, and let him be the brick that he is. So that's don't be subtle with him. I don't think, again, another beauty of this guy is, as well as buffing your army, as well as being able to take it, you don't have to be subtle with him. You don't have to be stealthy with him. You don't have to be a ninja master, a warlord master when it comes to playing him. Just shove him up the table and be aggressive. Okay, let's take him out for a spin. This is now the part of the show where we put him up against the Crash Test Marines. This is a 200-point Space Marine tactical unit with a veteran sergeant with a fist, a flamer, and a las cannon. I don't use any chapter tactics on these guys. This is just a paperwork exercise. This is just a math exercise, a way of seeing how well this 200-point unit will do against this 200-point unit. And normally they do horribly. So let's assume the Crash Test Marines have just got out of a Rhino or a drop pod. They can't assault this turn. They've managed to get Call in range. We're going to rapid fire the crap out of him and see if we can actually take a wound off of him. Let's roll some dice. Okay, the point of this exercise is to show you how resilient Call is. So we're going to assume that all of these shots hit, including the snap firing las cannon, because these guys just got out of a drop pod. So everything has rolled to hit and everything hit, miracle of miracles. Let's say as well that every single shot wounded. So Call has been wounded by a las cannon. He gets a 5-up invulnerable save, which he makes straight away. And then I was going to roll a 5-up, then a 5-up. Takes that one already. He's also been hit by the Flamer, which he has a 2-up save against, which he makes. And then he's been hit 16 times and wounded 16 times by strength 4 bolt guns. So he's got 16 2-up saves to make. Let's roll them as well. 16 2-up saves. There's a lot of ones in there. Look at that. That was actually 5 ones, so 5 failed up armor saves, but he's got a 5-up rerollable Feel No Pain. So he saves 2, and he's got 3 more rerollable 5-ups. Saves 3 of them in total with his Feel No Pain, so he's taken 2 wounds, assuming that all of these shots hit and wounded. That's just him rolling saves. 2 wounds. Leaves him with 3. So now it's the start of Call's turn, and at the start of his turn, he repairs D3 wounds. What was that? Okay, so he repairs 2 wounds. He's back up to full health, and then he shoots them with his Solar Atomizer. Let's get that dice. And the Solar Atomizer is a D3 shots. So he gets the full 3 shots. And he's got a ballistic skill of 5, so he's hitting on 2s, Mastercrafted. Hitting on 2s, and he only hits twice. He rerolls 1 because it's Mastercrafted. So that's 2 hits at strength 10, AP 1. Ooh, he only kills 1. That could have been much worse, but I guess it shows you that a strength 10 AP1 gun, even though it's got scary stat lines, only fires 3 times. So against a large unit, it's only ever going to do a maximum of 3 wounds. It's super scary against vehicles, but against even monstrous creatures, the most they'll take is a couple of wounds here or there. Anyway, at least he recovered all of his wounds as well. Now he's going to charge them, so they get to overwatch him. And I'm going to do the same again. Let's assume that every single Overwatch shot hits and wounds him. Let's do this again. Let's see if he really is that tough. So he's been wounded by a las cannon. He has a 5-up invuln, 5-up Feel No Pain, which he makes. And then he's been wounded, this time by 14 bolter shots and D3 Wall of Flame hits. So he's actually been wounded 17 times on the way in, assuming everything hits, hitting on 6s, wounded on 6s. 17 times. Unlikely, highly unlikely, but let's roll 17 saves on him. 17 dice, 2-up save. How many 1s did I get this time? There was 3 1s in there with a 5-up Feel No Pain, which is re-rollable. He takes 2 wounds on his way in. Now let's roll some charge distances. And he's in. This is where being a monster creature would be nice, because that would have been a Hammer of Wrath. It's not a Hammer of Wrath at initiative step 10. Instead, he has his Mechandendrite Hive thing, which is going to kick off. And he'll also challenge Sergeant Slap, because I want to get rid of this Power Fist. So let's swap him with Ernie. Do the Mechandendrite Hive, which is 2d6 strength, 2d6. So initiative step 10, he gets 10 strength 4 attacks. Got to roll to hit. And he hits on 3s because he's got a weapon skill of 5. So that's a crap ton of hits. And he'll wound on 4s. And that's a bunch of wounds. That's 5 wounds in total I've got there. 5 wounds. And so there's some 3-up saves coming in. which the Crash Test Marines make. Excellent. He's also got one more hit with his Mechadendrite Hive. He's got a hit first on a 3, and it's Strength User, so Strength 5, wounding on a 3, which doesn't wound. Interesting times. Then these guys pile in and punch him first, Initiative 4 versus Initiative 3. So Sergeant Slap's locked in a challenge, so there's 8 attacks back, hitting on 4s. That's good hitting, boys. But these are wounded on 6s, Strength 4 versus Toughness 6. And they managed to do a wound on call. He has a 2-up save with a 5-up feel no pain. And he makes it still just on 3 wounds there. Then I'm going to use the Power Axe. It's unwieldy. I'm going to go at Initiative 1. So Sergeant Slap and him will happen at the same time. Let's do Sergeant Slap's first. Come on, Sergeant. Hitting on force. 1 hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6, wounding on a 2. He manages to wound. Awesome. Let's see if Call can save it. He has a 5-up save. That's cocked. 5-up save. 5-up in bun. And then a 5-up feel no pain, which is re-rollable. Call is down to 2 wounds. Now he strikes. He's got 5 attacks on the charge, so 3 attacks base, 2 close combat weapons, plus 1 for the charge. His weapon skill 5, so he's hitting on 3s mastercrafted, which means he gets to re-roll that miss. So that's 5 hits. This is Strength 6. He's typically Strength 5, but plus 1 for the axe. So Strength 6, AP 2, wounding on 2s. And I dropped a dice on the floor, of course I did. There we go. So that's 4 wounds in total on the Crash Test Marines. Sergeant Slap is dead, and 3 of his colleagues. They lost the combat by 3, so now it's leadership 5 to stay in the fight, which they do. So they pile in, and it's their turn next. So no healing yet. Piling in just like that. And then they'll strike first at Initiative 4. So 5 attacks, hitting on 4s. That's only 2 hits this time. Come on, boys. And wounding on 6s. Double wounds. He could die. Very unlikely, but let's see what happens. Call has his 2-up save. And he makes it. So he's still alive. Oh, I did that completely arse about face, because before they even had a chance to hit him, he has 2d6 Mechadendrite. He has his attacks at initiative step 10. This time Snake Eyes. So out of the 2d6, only 2 attacks, hitting on 3s and wounding on 4s. So that didn't do anything. And then the strength 5 hits on a 3, wounds on a 3, doesn't do anything. That's the dice gods for you. Forgot to do those attacks, so they made sure that nothing happened when I finally got there. And now it's called to attack back at initiative 1. 4 attacks now, hitting on 3s, mastercrafted, wounding on 2s at strength 6, 4 more dead. Brutal stuff. 1 lone marine locked up with him, leadership 4. He fails, initiative roll off, he's got initiative, and he's got initiative. He manages to get away. Let's run him away. 7 inches. He runs away 7, he consolidates 4 inches, coming in for the kill. And now it's Call's turn, and at the start of Call's turn, he recovers D3 wounds. He's back up to full wounds, and then he'll shoot him with his solar atomizer, which is D3 shots, only 1 shot, hitting on a 2, mastercrafted, strength 10, AP 1, and boom. That's the end of that. That's a lot of dead Crash Test Marines. That was absolutely brutal. At the end of all of that, he's back up to health on 4 wounds. Took a few wounds, but remember as well, all the shots we said rolled to hit and wounded him, and all the Overwatch shots hit and wounded him. So that's him taking a lot of saves on his 2-up armor and his invulnerable save and his feel no pains. And that's him unsupported, not attached to a blob squad, not with anyone else to shove off wounds to, just him on his own, taking an extraordinary number of wounds, which would be extremely unlikely in any given scenario. He's still tough enough to take it all, tank it all, mulch through all of these guys and come out on full wounds. The guy is a tank, I'm telling you. He's going to be coming along to a lot of fights. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I must say that I have a little nerdgasm playing with this guy. He fills a big hole in the cult mech lists because most of the cult mech warlords are not particularly strong, and as anyone who plays Skitarii out there knows, that Skitarii warlords are extremely squishy, but this guy is he's the most resilient thing in that book all of a sudden. From warlords that could get run over quite quickly, we've now got this dude. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wargaming.